Welcome to the February 13th, 2023 City Council work session. I'd like to now turn it over to City Manager Benda to walk us through the agenda overview.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council. Before I launch into kind of a description of the overview that we're looking at, wanted to highlight a couple of new investments that you've made in this last budget in your chambers, not the least of which is this beautiful podium that's here with the seal on it. I know that our city clerk spent a tremendous amount of time, and we had no less than, I think, 10 new clocks in our office very recently, and you have 2 new ones positioned here. So continue to make really good investments so as to ensure that the connectivity that you expect of us with you, with our community, is met. And so wanted to highlight those first few things. Today's work session, we are continuing a opportunity at the beginning of this new calendar year to invite and have some of our partners kind of tell us what they're doing. Not the least of which is Josh Moore, who is here from GLTC, our public transit provider. He'll engage you today during your work session. Also, we have our utilities director, Tim, will be here, and he's going to talk about the overall master plan and where we're headed and what kind of investment will be needed to make sure that we stay ahead of the water system and its importance to our city. We have 2 business item briefings and then followed by a closed session. With that, I turn it back to you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to our work session agenda items. We'll start with the Greater Lynchburg Transit Agency update. Mr. Josh Moore.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, esteemed members of council. I'd also like to point out that we do have our board president, Ms. Cameron Howell, as well as our vice president, Mr. Randy Woods, here with us as well. So we wanted today to kind of give you an idea of what GLTC has been doing here in this last year and what we're planning on doing in 2024. So a couple of the highlights that we've done this year. We've pushed out our new real-time information system. So this has allowed us to push information to our customers. This is real-time information so they can see where the bus is located, what it's going to be doing. If there's any service delays, they're able to see that. If we have to push any messages, such as the other day when we were running fare free for the warming shelters, we were able to push that information so our customers can see that. So that helps them to plan their day, helps them to know what's going on. If we have a detour, say, it's cold, we've got a water line break, we've had a tree limb come down, there's an accident, we're having to skip a portion of a route, we can push that information to our customers so that they are able to get that information, plan, go about their day. We also have installed new signage at our transit center. This allows us to push that same information to our customers. It gives the ones that don't have a smartphone that same bit of information so they can see when the next bus is, when the bus after that is. This particular message on here is for Thanksgiving, where it's showing that we're not having service on Thanksgiving. If you're a routine customer of ours, you probably know that. If you're a newer customer, you may not realize that we don't run on Thanksgiving. This same piece of information technology is also feeding our new e-ink signs. We have 15 of these that will be going around the system. We have 11 up so far. They're at places as diverse as Florida Avenue Food Line. We have one at Boonesboro, Lynchburg General Hospital. We will have one up at the bus station, the bus stop at the mall on Candler's Mountain. We have one in front of Gabe's on our Route 4, which is one of our busiest lines. So these give you information on what the bus is doing. If you look at the picture on the left-hand side, it'll actually show that for this demo, that line is actually canceled right now. So that way you're not standing there waiting, wondering, is this bus coming? If we have to push out an alert, they show up here as well. We also took delivery of a couple of new vehicles. This is a different change for us. We have traditionally gone with larger body on chassis style vehicles for our wheelchair service, our EDA demand response service. So we're moving to a little bit smaller vehicle, partially to see if this will help us to conserve energy, a little bit easier to run, a little bit more fuel efficient. It's able to get into some smaller places that our current vehicles don't. Overhangs are a big issue for us. That's one of the things that we're looking at, trying to just change up what we're doing and see what's going to work for us. We also deployed in December of 2023 our mobile fare collection app. That was a beta. We have now since moved into full open use of this. If you go and search up GLTC Flex Fare, you're able to pull up the app, download it, and you're able to purchase your tickets and show your smartphone to the operator to ride the bus. This allows us to take credit cards, to not require our customers that are paying with a card to come into our transit center to buy a longer duration pass. This also is going to give us some additional options in the future for expanding access to customers that don't have smartphones. So this is just the first stage, but we'll have the ability for customers that don't have smartphones to use the same capabilities through a smart card. So one of the things that we are wanting to really highlight is here in the last couple of months since we've started rolling out our new projects, we've seen a marked increase in the number of passengers that we're transporting. We rolled out our new AVL system in late August, early September, and really starting in October, you'll notice that we've started to see a sizable increase in our ridership. We're attributing that partly to getting people much more used to looking at the information. They're feeling much more confident that they know where the vehicle is. Even if they're not sure where they're going, through the transit app, it's like Google Maps. You can simply put in a location and tell it, ask it, how do I get here? And it will tell you the instructions all the way to walk this far, here will be the stop, wait this amount of time, the vehicle will pick you up, this is how many stops it's going to take, and then it will, when you get off, say, here's how you need to walk to get to this location. And that's important, especially for some of our newer customers that may not know the system, or as we've encountered, they're going to work somewhere. They don't really know which this building is, but they say, hey, I'm looking for 1133 Timberlake. Well, if you don't exactly know what the building is, we can look it up on Google Maps, but it's hard if you're there and you get off to try to figure out which building that is. So this is a tool that helps them to navigate. And this is something that is also in use with a lot of other systems. So we're able to piggyback on that. We're not having to pay to keep that technology updated because Transit app is in use worldwide. One of the things that we will be rolling out here in this upcoming year is our new on-demand microtransit zone. We're going to be replacing 2 of our fixed routes with this zone. The ridership on those routes has never really recovered post-COVID, in part because the businesses there have not gone back to their standard operating. There were several call centers there. They have not gone back to in-person, so that's really changed the dynamics on this route. But I think, as we all know, the Timberlake corridor, the Graves Mill corridor, that is an area that there's a lot of new housing, a lot of new construction, and so this is a way to allow us to serve it while both being good stewards of our financial funds as well as trying out something new. I will point out that this project has been underway for a while and actually is one that GLTC received 100% state funding for. So there is actually no cost to us to run this pilot. So once again, we're going to be working on this microtransit. We have a 1-year demonstration grant. We'll be applying for another one if this goes forward. And then looking at that and evaluating, is this going to work for our system? What are the limitations for this? Are there things from this that maybe we're going to do differently in the future? As usual, we are pursuing federal and state funding as much as possible. We currently have a TRIP grant for funding our 3rd Route 4 bus. That is our highest ridership bus. So that is where the state is paying us to run that bus, and it's a step-down program, but we were one of the first awarded in that program. And one thing I do want to point out is this is work that my staff has done and our employees, but this past year we were awarded a spot as one of Lynchburg's best places to work. So that's really a thing that's been a bright spot for our employees. And at that, I'll take any questions if anybody has anything.
Thank you. Any questions from council or comments? Dr. Wilder?
Thank you for the information. It's very informative. I love seeing where you can kind of track the bus route and the service times and cancellation or whatever. I think that's really helpful. How are we partnering with other organizations like Move Up or other things of that nature to help kind of make sure our riders are meet all the needs of our riders?
So we have a couple of different organizations and a couple different ways that we partner with organizations. They range from working with organizations to purchase passes. We extend discounts to a number of organizations. In fact, the board has just recently changed some of the requirements, and part of that is our new mobile fare collection system allows us to have a better granularity of the processes of that, and so that we're able to extend that to a lot more individuals. In the past, since we were selling physical tickets, there were a lot more limitations to what we could do. We always are trying to work with all of our partners, working to help make sure that we're the mass transit system, but that doesn't mean that we cover everything. There are lots of other providers. There are a lot of smaller agencies that are handling needs that we don't in Amherst County, making connections between us and the town of Alta Vista's transit systems, between us and the Otterbus in Bedford. So we're always trying to work as well as we can with our partners. We also support state funds for van pools. So we actually pass through van pool funds as well to anybody that is using the van pool system. So,
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, moving on to the Water System Master Plan Status Report from Mr. Tim Mitchell.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. It's my pleasure to give you an update on where we are with our master plan and just an overview of it. First of all, just wanted to touch on why we're doing a master plan. For a number of years, we've been talking about how quickly we need to renew our water system, talking about a 100-year replacement cycle and that type of thing. But the master plan really looked at more specifics, looked at specific projects that needed to be done, looked at different pipe materials, different ages of pipe, and a number of different priorities to come up with a list of specific projects that we need to focus on. I also looked at our future growth needs. We have certain areas of the city that are growing, and we want to be sure that thinking ahead that we're preparing for that growth and have adequate water service to those areas of the city in the future. So why are we doing this? Mainly to ensure the delivery of reliable, high-quality water, which is essential to the success of a thriving community. If you think about every citizen, every visitor, every business is dependent upon our services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we want to make sure that we have a reliable and safe water system going into the future. Also to reduce the frequency of waterline breaks, also to have adequate fire flow protection, and then again to meet the future demands of a growing city. So back in 2020, we contracted with an engineering firm, Whitman, Reckart and Associates, or WRA, to really start digging into and looking at our water system needs and looking at specific areas of the city and identifying specific projects, and also look at strategies to accommodate growth through the year 2050. First phase of the plan identified 49 waterline replacement projects that are high priorities, and this moves us towards a goal of a 100-year renewal cycle for our water utility, which is based upon industry recommendations and pipe manufacturer recommendations as well. So a little bit about our water system. We're responsible for 455 miles of water lines, and that's basically the equivalent distance from here to New York City. Today, we have 95 miles of pipeline that really needs to be replaced or should have already been replaced. Over the next 25 years, we'll have another 32 miles of pipeline that will be added to that list as well. So if you think about the timeline between in the early 1900s, 1920 to 1940 and 50, the country is going through a couple world wars, depression, so there wasn't a whole lot of growth. But then when we hit 1950 and 1960, we had a lot of growth. And we built a new water plant in the city. We had a lot of growth. There's a lot of new water lines in the 1950s and 60s. So we want to catch up, try to catch up before we get to that big growth curve in the 50s and 60s. So impacts of aging water infrastructure. Again, cast iron pipelines, which that was historically most of the pipe that was installed back in the early 1900s and mid-1900s. These pipes are susceptible to corrosion, waterline breaks, and this can impact water quality, cause service disruptions, and puts a strain on staffing and are costly to repair. Undersized pipes, which are mainly in the older areas of the city, but there are areas in the city that do not have adequate fire protection. We have pipelines that are 4 inches and smaller, which do not provide adequate fire flow to meet their fire demands. And then another type of pipe that we have in the city, most of this is in the annexed areas of the city, is asbestos cement pipeline. And this is an inferior pipeline material. It was stopped being used in the 1970s, but it's hazardous to handle, and we have to have, anytime we work on it, we have special protocol that our staff has to follow to handle it, and then also dispose of it if we ever work on it. So the thing about waterline breaks is they can happen anytime, anywhere, and they're very unpredictable. They can, as I mentioned, can cause water service outages for residents, businesses, and hospitals and schools, cause damage to public and private property. Road closures often lead to boil water notices, and then it also puts a strain on staffing and are costly to repair. And the break here was January 13th at Hurdle Hill. In January alone this year, we had 13 waterline breaks. That was throughout the city. 9 of the breaks were in pipes that were 70 years or older or made of asbestos cement. And since January, we've had a number more in February. This picture here is of Ford Avenue in Kenyon. This happened on January 16th. This pipeline was installed in 1911. This shut down Westover Dairy for a period of time, as well as a few other businesses, and impacted a few other businesses in the area for several hours, and then there was portions of Ford Avenue were closed for about 3 days while we made the repairs and restored the pavement. So that was a pretty extensive break and complex repair that we had to make. Also, many of you are aware of the Easter 2023 waterline break. This was an extensive break on Commerce Street, very costly, and if you were in the Finance Committee meeting last time, I talked a little bit about how that's impacting this year's operating budget. A lot of the expenses related to that break fell into this current fiscal year because a lot of the repairs were done to the bluff walk, and the restoration of the area around the bluff walk occurred in the summertime. So a lot of the expenses hit this year as well. This was also a pipe that was installed in 1911 and impacted restaurants and businesses downtown. Fire flow is important for obvious reasons, but if you don't have adequate fire flow, water flow, and pressure, then we can't successfully fight and safely fight fires. So it's definitely critical in certain areas of the city that we look at the pipelines that are undersized so that we're getting adequate fire flow to those areas of the city. So some of this is how we prioritize the projects. One, we're looking at the small pipelines, 4 inches and smaller, for fire flow protection. We're looking at the asbestos cement pipeline, which is inferior pipe, also hazardous to handle. And then we're looking at aging cast iron pipe that's over 100 years old. We also look at other areas of the city. Just because a pipe isn't 100 years old doesn't mean it's not susceptible to breaks. It could be in areas of high pressure or areas where there's corrosive soil. Pleasant Valley Road has a pipeline that's relatively new, but we have constant breaks on it, so we're looking at needing to replace that pipeline as well. And then we also try to match up if our waterline replacement projects with other projects that we're doing, either sewer extensions, sewer replacement, CSO projects, so that when we're working in a neighborhood, we're coordinating all of our efforts so that we're renewing all the infrastructure at the same time in those neighborhoods. And ignore the picture caption at the bottom. I moved some pictures around and forgot to delete that. But just an overview of the 2050 replacement needs. By that time, we need to replace about 127 miles of pipeline, or about 5 miles per year. And it's broken down into about 18 miles of small diameter lines, 33 miles of asbestos cement and water lines, and then about 76 miles of older pipeline. And the picture on the left-hand side basically shows what we've done for each project area. We look at the project area and we identify the pipelines that need to be replaced. Then we develop a sheet that shows the pipelines to be replaced, the estimated cost, and the estimated schedule, so that we can kind of keep track of the priorities. First phase of this effort is these are the projects listed in the first phase. We're hoping to get these projects done by 2030 or at least by 2035. And these projects are scattered throughout the city. So, as I mentioned, we also looked at growth needs. The chart on the right-hand side shows projected growth. The orange line shows the 2013 comp plan estimated growth, and then the purple line shows the Weldon Cooper Center's projected growth for Lynchburg. But they diverge some, but in both cases they show their population growth continuing to escalate. And there's a couple projects that are really high priority projects that we need to focus on, and one is Carroll Avenue Pump Station. This pump station pumps water to water tanks on Candler's Mountain. Then those tanks serve Liberty University, Wards Road, along 460 in Tyriana, and ultimately into Campbell County along 460. Basically, that pump station is at its capacity now, so we're getting to the point where we need to upgrade that pump station, add another pump to meet our future growth needs in that area. Mill Lane tank. Half the city's water goes through Mill Lane from the Abert water treatment plant. And right now in Mill Lane, we only have one storage tank. If you look at most water tank sites throughout the city, you'll see at least 2 water tanks. And the reason for that is that we can take one tank offline for maintenance and cleaning and painting and keep the other tank online to provide water service. Mill Lane, we don't have that ability to do that. So we really need a second tank to be able to maintain the primary tank there. Also, we will need another tank to meet the future growth needs on the western portion of the city. So looking ahead, up until now, we've been replacing about 2.5 miles of water line per year. So that's about a 200-year replacement cycle. What's happened is inflation has really impacted our cost, our water line replacement costs. Up until a couple years ago, the average for a typical project like pictured here, it cost about $275 per foot of water line to replace that project. Now it's at least $475 per foot. So we're going from a 200-year replacement cycle to a 270-year replacement cycle. So on that path, by the year 2300, we will have renewed our water system, which is obviously not sustainable. If we follow the recommendations of the master plan, we could catch up to a 100-year replacement cycle by 2050. And then obviously, along with water line replacement comes funding issues. So during the budget discussions we'll have with council this year, we'll be presenting a couple options, their recommendation and funding options as far as the water system renewal. So in summary, we have an opportunity before we get to the 1950s and 60s growth period to try to catch up and get on track with our replacement rates. Our current replacement rate is definitely not adequate to meet our system and our citizens' needs. The Water System Master Plan identifies projects that puts us on a path of a 100-year replacement cycle, and a well-maintained water system is critical for both health and sustainability and just the future growth and prosperity of our city. So with that, I'll be glad to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council? No? Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Mitchell.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to our business item briefings. Monument Terrace Memorials. This item will appear before council for action on February 27th, 2024. Mr. Tom Martin.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. This is a business item briefing on Monument Terrace. The request comes from the Virginia Piedmont chapter of the Military Order of the World Wars, the Lynchburg Area Veterans Council, and the Military Order of the Purple Heart. These are men and women that have given so much to our city and our country, and they continue to give by supporting our active duty troops, our veterans, our law enforcement, and firefighters. And they are requesting 3 additions to Monument Terrace. Three additions. The first would be at the top, a Gulf War and Global War on Terror plaque, Purple Heart Memorial Bench, and then at the bottom, a soldier's battlefield cross. So the first near the top would be the plaque recognizing the Gulf War and the Global War on Terror. If citizens of Lynchburg are identified that have given that ultimate sacrifice during these conflicts, their names could be engraved on the limestone surrounding the plaque. And this is a draft of what the plaque, how it would appear. The second addition is at the bottom of the terrace to the left in the landscaped area. This would be a proposed battlefield cross. The battlefield cross is recognized as a symbol, again, of the ultimate sacrifice during battle. It also gives people the ability to mourn when they couldn't attend funerals. And the last addition, this is an example of what that battlefield sculpture would look like in detail. And the last addition is a Purple Heart bench at the Purple Heart level of the terrace. It would be located there for the convenience of citizens that would like to view that memorial. These items are being funded completely by those organizations. There's no cost to the city. The additions have been reviewed by the Monument Terrace Advisory Committee with consensus on their locations, and they also meet the 2007 policy that was put in place by council for additions to Monument Terrace. As the mayor said, this will come before you on February 27th for a public hearing.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council? Councilman Helgeson?
I guess not on necessarily this, but there was another request I got with regarding some of the banners up and down on the street from some of the recognition that has happened. Have you gotten any of that yet?
No, sir.
Okay, I'll get that to you. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Well, I think it looks wonderful, and I'm looking forward to seeing those actually come to life, so appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, moving on to the CASA lease agreement. This item will appear before council for action on February 27th, 2024. Ms. Gaynell Hart.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of City Council. Yeah, I'm here to speak on behalf of renewing the lease for the court-appointed special advocates. They lease office space in the Monument Terrace building at 901 Church Street. The lease was last renewed in 2019, but they've had the space since 2012. We did miss a small foyer that they are using, and that has been added to this lease.
Should be a clicker right there, Dino, next to the, oops. There you go.
Yeah, and here is a rendering of the first floor, and so you'll see the CASA space and the DLA space on the other side of the building.
Let me help you out. We'll just make it really pretty real quick. Sorry, Gino.
You're good, thank you. And again, the foyer space in the blue was admitted in the last lease renewal. The estimated value of this space is the same as it was in 2019, so the only addition is the 136 additional square feet of the FOIA, and you will consider this item again on February 27th after a public hearing. And that is all that I have.
Thank you. Any questions or concerns from council? Councilman Helgeson?
I'm looking at this, and it's, $48,000 a year is the money or money's worth gift that is being proposed to be made, which is about $250,000. I know CASA is a, good nonprofit, but there's lots of nonprofits. How do we distinguish this one versus so many others that you're, by default giving $250,000 to? Maybe this is to,
Well, Howard, to answer that, I don't know if it's by default. They have been tenants since when?
Since 2012, and apparently there was some budgeting. Some money was budgeted toward CASA before that, so City Council was budgeting money toward CASA. So in lieu of giving them money in the budget, this was what we did, is gave them space.
and I think, I don't know if that's a good way of doing it. That was, I think, more of a default kind of way, because this is done once every 5 years, as opposed to it's an annual appropriation for an annual $50,000 that's going in there. There's lots of nonprofits that have lots of things and have lots of need for space. I don't know, it may have been before when money was being donated via the budget, where you'd have to get a supermajority to donate to this organization and that organization. I think at the time we started looking more for some of the CDBG money that was being used to help the nonprofits in a fashion that would meet the CDBG kind of goals and objectives. There's a lot of nonprofits. And I'm seeing this, and like we're looking at later tonight, with the second reading of another, gift to an organization. Is that a normal precedent that we want to take? Because we got to keep in mind that where these resources come from are taxpayers, and we're now figuring out which is the favorite group that we want to give to. And again, I know CASAS does lots of good things, and that's not the issue. But when we have space that could be rented out for fair market value or be sold, for that matter, it's a little different.
Sure. And what I would respond is that the complication in contemplating the latter of what you propose is that I'd be selling a portion of a building that's already populated by mostly municipal services. So don't know that I would recommend it, from my position, to recommend a portion of the building for sale as opposed to the whole thing, right?
But with it, again, it's the precedent of a portion. So you're
Sure.
looking at square footage, whether it be another place, whether it be fixing up an old school to then renting. Now we have a pretty good track record of saying, hey, we're not going to charge you rent. We're going to give you free because we gave it to another group.
Sure. I understand your precedent conversation. I think the way to remedy that, considering that this predates my tenure here, is that you could take it to market, bid it. You'd structure the RFP for a nonprofit, and then we would come back with what we find and the rates that they propose to rent it at. I will say that don't know that CASA, who you've said a couple different times have a great resource and what have you, don't know that they're prepared to move to different space and what that would look like for them. So what we could consider in this, if what the temperament of council, we can bring this back for your vote on the 27th, is you can look at structuring a less of a lease agreement, shorter one, to give them time, so that, because I think an abrupt turnaround for CASA right now to consider space. So if what we want to do is think about a shorter lease, and I'd have to look to the city attorney about, I think you can do, it's been a minute since I only play one on TV these days, but you can do a certain amount of lease year with a certain amount of options. So that will give everybody time, if that's where we want to head with the conversation about that space in that particular building.
And I think that would be a fair process, because part of the lease, as I read it, was not just a year, it was 5 years. Mm-hmm. And so with that, with options for renewing, and some of this, like you mentioned, predated you. Some of this, most people on council never even seen this, because they haven't been here, when this originally was implemented years ago. And so with that, I think that would be a better thing you know, again, because there's so many, to at least give options back on the 27th.
Sure.
You know, if council is, you know, wants to
We'll bring
say.
you some options, and I'll also do better to kind of lay out the building, because, again, I think maybe you mentioned just a second ago about what people have experienced or seen. I'd encourage you to go walk that building in the interim to see who's in there, because I think right now the tenants are the Commonwealth's attorney. Help me out here. What else is it?
Police.
The police was there, the
Police, yeah.
investigators, and,
DLA.
yeah.
DLA and CASA, so
Yep.
municipal heavy, and so in that respect, it also probably helped draw some connections between CASA and its adjacent to
Court.
different services
Yep.
downtown and what that means for their clientele, but we can have all that ready to go on the 27th.
That would be good, thank you.
Welcome.
Can I ask one
Yes.
question of council? I guess, before I edit the lease that was proposed for you all for BIB, is that something you all would like to see as a body? To come back with a term of 1 year with the option to renew for up to 5-year terms versus a 5-year lease for CASA?
Prudent, at least for council to have options.
Dr. Wilder?
I'm comfortable the way it is. I appreciate the work that they do. Now, I've worked with CASA for years. I'm a foster parent, so I've worked with them for 20 plus years. I've just seen the work they've done in our community. It's good to have them in a location because they're close to the court system as well as other agencies they work with and partner with. And they're also close between courts and also social services. So I think they're a crucial part of our community that serves a crucial area that's definitely needed when children are going through the worst times of their lives, to have an advocate for them. So we as a community need to do what we can to support agencies like that to be in that right position. They've been in that building. So I support them in that current location, whether 5 years or whatever. I just support the current lease, and the work that they're doing is so crucial to our community and to our children. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Feraldi?
I'd just like to note for the record, in 2012, Councilmember Helgeson did vote support of the lease agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Feraldi for your, and I agree now, it's a 5-year. It's a different thing. It's actually more. There's not an agreement, so it's a matter of looking at it for a year.
Did you have an opinion on it?
I was just offering for the record.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? I would say that I agree with keeping it on the 5-year. I agree with Dr. Wilder. I think the location is prudent for the services they provide with access to the courts and family court specifically, and social services. So I do not agree with changing the lease.
And again, with it,
Councilman Hobson.
it gives them the options.
Sure.
So the option is, since this is not a time to vote on the item, it's an option to say, do we want to have an option to have a 1-year lease, or do we want to do a 5-year lease? And a 5-year lease is,
I understand that, but
council
we're
changes.
asking the attorney to
Yes.
work on something. So if the consensus of the majority is not to,
To have an option is what it is. So you don't
Right,
want
no,
an
I
option.
understand.
Yeah.
Yes, I
So if
understand
you don't want an option, say no.
Yeah,
If you
I know
do
what
want to have
option
an
is.
option, say yes.
right.
Then you vote on the 5 years since you've already made up your mind.
I get
Good.
that. Yeah, I understand that. Anybody else have a comment? No? Councilman Mischins?
I do think it would be good to have some options. I'm also uncomfortable with the city taking a position to pick winners and losers when it comes to nonprofits, and that's pretty much all I've got to add to the conversation.
What would you,
I guess I'd be hoping for at least 2 more. And the reason I'm trying to get council to give me some guidance here is because if we do a vote on the 27th, we have to advertise for a public hearing. As of now, the advertisement speaks to a 5-year term. We can pull that, but what I would suggest is if council wants to continue to discuss the term, my thought would be is to, of course, I could bring back some additional options, but not to do the public hearing at the next hearing, so I can have guidance on what the term will be before it's advertised.
so are there two, yes, Councilman Dolan?
I have no problem with a 5-year term. I think it makes sense. I mean, I don't really understand why you'd want to do a 1-year term and then another, keep going through it every year. I mean, it's obvious the best spot for these folks.
Councilman Taylor, do you have an opinion?
Seems to me it's a good plan in place, 5-year lease. We continue.
Vice Mayor.
And excuse me, it's a lease, it's not something that we're just giving away. That's the whole premise.
And if it does give council any comfort, there is some language in here that both parties have the ongoing option to terminate this lease at any time by providing written notice of such election to terminate to the non-terminating party at least 90 days prior to the desired termination date. So if there was ever a reason you all wanted to terminate the lease, certainly you could do so. Both parties are agreeing to that ongoing election to terminate. So it sounds like there's at least 4 to continue with the 5-year lease. So I guess with that, if no objection from any other staff, I'll leave the lease as is and the advertisement as is that was submitted.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to roll call. Dr. Wilder.
Yes, just real quick. I know the NAACP had a forum, a community forum about 2 weeks ago or so, in reference to some of the hatred flyers that are going around our community. We just want to stress love in our community, and this is not a place for hatred. Also, there's a unity walk on Saturday, I believe it's at 10 o'clock on 5th Street. So we as a community need to come out and support that as much as possible. We need much unity as we can get during these challenging times in our nation. Also, there was a shooting on Friday. A young man to me, Curl Mack, is a coach, our community taxi driver. I don't know the particular situation, but I know he was shot and killed. So we're praying for that family. There's no place for hatred or shooting of victims in our community as well. So we continue to pray for the family. I know him as being a coach. He used our gym for several years. So we want to continue to pray for his family. There's a memorial service on Saturday as well. And also, one of our long-term residents of Ward 2, our mother Dolores Key, she passed on Sunday. She was about 90 years old. Has a church on Bedford Avenue, Bishop Paul Key's mother. So we continue to pray for the Key family. She's been her husband started a church about 50 plus years ago, and they have been strong supporters of Ward 2 in our community. They also live in Ward 2. So we're going to pray for her family, and all the contributions that she made has been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Dolan?
I have nothing.
Councilman Helgeson? Councilman Mitchins? Councilman Taylor?
Yeah. I too condemn the racist flyers. It takes a coward to do this, 2 o'clock in the morning. You're a coward. And we stand with our community. People don't like to see Brother Kent White and me embracing one another, saying, "Thank you, brother, praise the Lord." They don't like that, but we're above that. So if you're doing this, you need to stop it. It's water on a duck's back, which means it don't mean a thing.
Vice Mayor Feraldi?
I don't know how I'm supposed to follow that. No items.
Okay, tonight we'll be highlighting the Lynchburg Police Department. Your Lynchburg Police Department has served our community since 1805 and has been internationally accredited law enforcement agency continuously since 1989. Their mission is to partner with our community and protect our citizens while respecting the rights and dignity of all persons. With the recent addition of our Emergency Communications Center, LINCOM, your LPD is made up of 271 public servants whose leadership, professionalism, and dedication serve our residents and visitors 24 hours a day. In 2023, your LPD responded to 62,583 calls for service, and employees were formally committed for their actions 374 times. Through the implementation of stratified policing and collaboration with our great community members from 2022 to 2023, we saw a 30% decrease in violent firearm offenses, a 50% reduction in homicides, and a 29% reduction in robberies. This approach also allowed your LPD to increase visibility in areas experiencing higher volumes of calls for service and criminal activity. Your LPD partners with our community and participates in dozens of community events every year. In 2023, just a few of these events included Cops and Bobbers, Touch a Truck, Believing in Kids Excelling, Neighborhood Watch Meetings, Citizens Police Academy, and National Night Out. In 2025, with the support of City Council and after years of planning, your LPD will open a new state-of-the-art headquarters that will carry the department and our community into the next era of policing in Lynchburg. The nearly 100,000 square foot building located at the corner of Oddfellows Road and Albert Langford Drive will allow for future expansion, the implementation of new technology, and ample space to engage our residents, business owners, and visitors. This move will provide better security for staff, make operations and communications more effective, and allow for better community engagement. With competitive pay, exceptional training, and advanced equipment, your LPD remains a leader in Virginia law enforcement and beyond. Their community focus and professionalism will continue to help make Lynchburg an incredible place to be. So now I will address our citizens regarding the flyers that my colleagues have mentioned. On Christmas Eve, and again just a few weeks ago, some hurtful flyers were passed out in several of our neighborhoods. Vice Mayor Feraldi addressed this at our January 9th meeting. I addressed it at a meeting a few weeks ago with our citizens, along with our Chief of Police and our Commonwealth's Attorney. It was obviously a very emotional meeting because these flyers have been extremely hurtful to a segment of our city, and what hurts our citizens hurts me. And we talked in that meeting about several options of how to address these situations. And I know that our city attorney has looked into any ordinances that could be pursued at this level. Unfortunately, there was really nothing that we could do at this level that wasn't already being done at the state level. So what can be done is we as a community can stand together. I will still extend my heartfelt apologies to those who have been hurt by these flyers. We understand that because it was meant to be hurtful. And we've all, those of us who've mentioned it this evening and has mentioned it before, condemn these acts, and those who have been intentional about trying to divide our city with these racist and anti-Semitic flyers. And here's what I will say, and I said it at the meeting the other week. First of all, not in our house. We won't let this happen in our city to divide us with the intentions behind these flyers. We will not allow this person or group to divide, not by zip code, not by race, and not by religion. We are a city united by beautiful and wonderful people, and we will stand together and we will love our neighbors because we are Lynchburg. And that's the message that I want spread. We will now move on to closed session. Consideration of a closed meeting to discuss appointments for vacancies to the following boards and commissions: Lynchburg Regional Airport Commission, Greater Lynchburg Transit Company Board of Directors, Lynchburg Redevelopment and Housing Authority Board of Directors, Planning Commission, Parking Authority, and Towing Advisory Board, and to discuss the performance of specific membership to the city's Youth Services Advisory Board in relations to the operations of the city, pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia, 1950 as amended. Do I have a motion to go into closed? Do I second? Second. Further discussion? Please vote.
Just do it all simultaneously?
Oh. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
I was pressing my